What if we can positively impact society by reshaping the mindsets of young men? And while we're at it, let me ask you, what does it mean to be a man? My name is Dennie Morolda, a father, a teacher, a coach, a mentor, and a principal with over 2 decades of experience shaping the minds and characters of young men across the United States. If these questions resonate, if you're a young man looking to improve your life or a parent looking for tools to help your son become the best version of himself, the Building Men podcast was created for you. What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Building Men podcast, or welcome back if you are a longtime listener. As always, I'm your host, Dennie Morolda, joined today by JD Fleming. JD is a high school computer science teacher down in Mississippi, and he also wrote the book Teach Like a Man. And if you know me, that title definitely resonates. It was the reason why we were connected, and we've stayed in touch over the last. It's probably been what, a year now, JD, that we've
a couple of years.
it's been a minute since you and I. But this is the first time that we're actually having, more of a face-to-face conversation rather than just over the phone or something like that. So welcome to the podcast, man. I appreciate you being here.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm glad to finally, connect with you. We've been kind of following a couple of years back and forth, and it's great to finally get to talk to you.
So one of the things that was often or has been brought to my attention when I go into a school, right? I start working with the boys in a school and helping the administration and the teachers connect on a deeper level, or even parents connect on a deeper level with the kids. One thing I'll hear is, what's wrong with the boys? What's wrong with the boys today? What's wrong with the boys in our school? So I would ask you, as a teacher of high school boys, what are the things that you're identifying right now are the biggest challenges or problems facing young men today?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the big thing of what I'm working with is, boys that especially don't have really, say, a positive influence, a positive male role model in their lives, outside of school. So as a teacher, as a man that's in a classroom, I really want to set a positive example and be a good kind of a leader that they can look to and say, all right, this is what being just a positive man and being an influence in other people's lives. This is kind of what that looks like, as opposed to what they're seeing on, I don't know, like on TikTok, or even on in social media, just in general, or in music. Just giving them a different example of what it means to be a just to be a man, just in general, just to be a positive influence, something that they may not have seen before necessarily.
Right. To learn more about our programs, including one-on-one mentorship coaching, the foundation, our Building Men online group community for young men, or to bring a Building Men experience to your school, check out our website, buildingmen.io, or click the links in the bio. Now, back to the show. So when I think about those negative influences that you just mentioned, JD, what the kids are seeing on social media, what they're listening to in music, it could be what they're seeing at press conferences as they're watching their favorite sports team. Right. They're getting influence in some way, shape, or form, and a lot of the influences that we're seeing are more negative influences. So when you would think about what those influences are, what would you say are one or two things that what you're seeing from kids in your classes in high school, they're acting this way, or this is a belief that they've had that you've seen more as in a general term? What are the things that you would pick on and say, okay, it could be, lethargy, or it could be the kids are overly distracted? What are certain things that you're seeing across the board?
Yeah, just being distracted, like you said, it's almost like the phones are just taking over, and that's all they know, that's all that they want to do, is just be on social media and watch their videos. And it's affecting the way that they even interact with each other. Like I was assistant basketball coach and assistant track coach, at the high school, and just the way that um they interact with each other and talk to each other, it's almost like they're just being negative to each other a lot, from what I've seen, just tearing each other down instead of being what I would consider to be, just be a good friend in general, and try to support each other and build each other up. But it seems like there's a lot of pressure to um m- talk to each other in a way that looks like a clip that they would see
Hmm.
on TikTok. Like they want to do something that is a 30-second viral clip in real life constantly.
Agreed.
And it's like, guys, that's not, these are lasting relationships that you're building with each other. Don't try to cheapen that by making whatever it is that you do with your friend into something that you think is going to go viral online. We need to have a deeper connection with each other beyond that.
Agreed. And there's this anonymity that comes along with being that keyboard tough guy,
Yeah.
warrior that goes out and will make negative comments. And what's happened, in my opinion, is you see the kids where someone posts something and then they say something with, behind the protection of their phone. And so they'll
Right.
say something and they don't get the reaction like we did as we were growing up. Like if I said something to you that was mean or cutting or hurtful, I got the immediate reaction of the way that you looked, either the sadness that I would see in your eyes or the hurt or the upset or the anger and the frustration, like I'm about to get punched in the face right now from that comment that I just made.
Right.
And because the kids are they're making the comment and they get that high and they walk away and they get that, it's really important for them to get that face to face reaction from the person that they're making the comment to. So
Right.
is there anything that you're doing in your classroom right now that you're teaching computer science, right? So you're
Yeah.
also like understanding the need for technology in the classroom. But
Yeah.
how are you balancing that with also the face-to-face interaction, social, the relational piece in the classroom as well?
Yeah. What I try to do is take those interactions that they would normally just have, say, behind their kind of, the safety of the screen, right? And just bring that into real life so that, like with the computer science stuff, we do projects about cybersecurity and
Yep.
about, internet bullying and hazing, things like that, and bring it out of the virtual and back into, the physical reality that we actually live in. And I think for kids that have grown up with technology, their entire lives, it's a little different whenever they can see these comments and things that they wouldn't want shared publicly in their own lives, but it's something that they would share with strangers on the other side of the world. Just seeing the way that it interacts in reality, I think it's kind of eye-opening for them just to actually talk with each other in person about the things that they wouldn't want to be
Right.
known. So we do different projects and different things, and I bring it out so that they can actually see that and actually interact with each other in what I would call, the real world, as opposed to the virtual world
Right.
where everything's kind of anonymous.
So with that being said, there's a big difference. I had a couple conversations with educators today around the difference in the way kids interact pre and post COVID. Right, the
Oh yeah.
world is a different place after that time. I do believe it, especially kids that missed out on developmental benchmarks. Like I saw kids that went through the COVID time frame when they were supposed to be in like sixth, seventh grade. And all of a sudden they came back into schools and they were 14-year-olds and they were in eighth grade, but they presented more like fifth graders. The
Right.
way that they were grabbing each other and they acted very immature because they didn't have those moments of development in school where they knew they were the low man on the totem pole and you couldn't come in and act a fool in certain ways, so they were super immature. Did you see something similar in your own experience in the high school setting with kids?
Oh yeah, definitely. We're still recovering from
Yeah.
that. The kids that are seniors this year, were, they were in junior high, they were in, seventh, eighth grade during COVID, during all the shutdown and everything. And they're still adjusting to having to be in the classroom and to have sort of that structure about, this is what we do, day to day, and just making that adjustment still. And even the way that they interact with each other is, I mean, it's just like kind of a wave of the students that we had that graduated in 2020, the class of 2020. My oldest daughter, she was part of that class, and just the way that she is with her, she's working now, so just in the world in general, and the way that she interacts with, her boss and her coworkers and everything, compared to other students that are, say, seniors now. There's a big difference in the way they interact in the real world. I think there were a lot of good things that came out of that, because, like, as a computer science teacher, when we shifted over into virtual learning and hybrid learning, I was kind of I was prepared for that a little better than, other teachers who didn't use technology as much when we had to shift over into the virtual learning of the hybrid. But I think there was a lot of good things, like the way that our digital learning platforms, like um, you know, Canvas and Google Classroom and Zoom, the way that those technologies really had to evolve to to meet the challenge of what we were trying to do. Um, but a lot of teachers just wanted to take what they were doing in person in a classroom and just put that into a virtual, a digital format, and it didn't really translate as well. I think that the way that, because I was teaching computer science, probably, but the way that we did our classes worked out worked out pretty well for what we were trying to do.
And I agree. And what I think happened too was it forced a lot of teachers who were more set in their ways to
Mhm.
understand, how do I incorporate technology not as the curriculum, but
Right,
use it as a spice that I'm going to put on, my meal. It's not the be
right,
all end all. It is not the curriculum, but it's something that you could use to supplement and help kids connect with it on a deeper level.
right,
But I also think since then we've had a lot of teachers that have used it as, now that is the teaching, right?
right.
They've almost used it as a crutch in some capacity.
Yeah,
And what I'd love to know, JD, is, being an experienced educator, I definitely have ideas around what a high school would look like, a middle school or a high school would look like if I had an opportunity to create it, and it would look very, very different than what a traditional high school looks like today,
right. Yeah.
based on my experience as an administrator, as a teacher, as a coach, as a mentor, but also as a dad as well. So, if you had an opportunity right now, you have a blank check and you're going to create a school, and your
Mhm.
job in this school is to create like a group of individuals that they're ready to lead in the future, what would be things that you would have in your school? What would it look like? What would be courses that the kids would take or have an option to take?
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of room for change. And I don't think that it's something that needs to start at the high school. We need to go back to, elementary, kindergarten, first grade, all the way up, and basically kind of restructure the way that we just do school in general, in my opinion. I think, for one of the big things that I kind of want to advocate for is we have a shortage of men that are in the classroom, just, all over. Basically, for all of education, only like 24% of all the teachers are
Mm-hmm.
men, and almost all of them are junior high and high
Yep.
school.
Yep.
Whenever kids are in the lower elementary grades, they don't have men that they see on a regular basis, or if they do, it's the administrator. It's the
And
one that
the gym
comes.
teacher. It's the gym
Yeah,
teacher. Like Mr. Yusenko was wearing nut huggers in 1986. I remember I was scared to death of this dude. He had a
Right.
perm, like, but
Yeah.
the guy was like, that was the only male teacher in the entire school, right?
Right. And they're the ones that get called whenever the kid's in trouble. And they want somebody to step in to kind of put the fear into them and say, hey, straighten up. Basically, that's the role that men play in the younger grades up till, the kids are what, 11, 12 years old. They probably don't have one or two male teachers. I would like to see men come in, all the way down and be able to work with the kids and not have people look at them crazy. Whenever a man comes and says, I want to be a teacher and I want to work with, first graders and second graders, people pause and they say, what's going on with this guy? That's not, and I would like to change that perception because kids need a male influence and they need it basically throughout their whole lives. I mean, there's different roles and there's different influences between like a mother and a father, or a male teacher, a female teacher, and it's not that one is more important or than the other. It's about working together, and balancing each other and bringing each other up so that everyone can be successful. And I think that there's a lot of kids that are growing up in homes without their father
Hmm.
being present. There's like me, I had my dad was around until my parents split when I was like 13, 14 years old. So I went through basically the whole time that I was in high school. My dad just kind of he disappeared. I didn't have a male influence at all during that whole time. And even when I was younger, I wouldn't say that the influence I did have was great, you know. Um, and even as a student myself, I didn't really get a lot of influence from the teachers. Uh I wouldn't say that I was a great student. I didn't do sports. I didn't do, any of these extracurricular activities. I stayed in trouble. That's what I did. And I didn't really I didn't really get it together until I went into the military. I was like 20, 22 whenever I went to boot camp. I was married, I had a kid, and that's whenever I started kind of getting my life together.
Right.
But if I growing up, if I had had a little more, I think, positive influence from different men as I was growing up, I mean, I probably would have ended up on a different path. And I would like to see more men come in and take on that responsibility and that role of being, the influence that a lot of these kids need because they don't have anybody maybe.
Yep. Agreed. And I had a similar, didn't have the positive male role model in my life. My father was there, but just not a good role model for me. So I was constantly chasing it as well. The
Right.
thing that it comes down to, though, and so I'll, like, as an example, so I started teaching, I student taught in September of 2000, and then did a long-term substitute position starting in January 2001. And my first full-time position in New Jersey, in central New Jersey, was September of 2001. My third day teaching was September 11th, where kids in my school were impacted by 9/11. And I remember my first job teaching, my first full-time job, I was making $34,000 a year. And immediately, like, one, I love the leadership role. I've always gravitated toward leadership. But then I was also like, okay, if I'm going to have a family, especially if I'm going to have kids, I can't live on this salary. So for
Mhm.
me, it was, I needed to go back and get my master's degree. One, I wanted to advance my education, but then if I wanted to support a family, I needed to get into an administrative position. I think that's what happens, JD, is a lot of men, if you are going to be the provider for your family, the teaching salary doesn't align with that in many respects unless you're doing
Right.
something additional. You're working as a coach in every single season, you have a summertime job doing
Mhm.
whatever, you're a bartender, you're a waiter, whatever it is. So there, it needs to be
Yeah.
part of a larger picture. So how can we do that? How can we get men into the profession recognizing that my father told me one of his motivational speeches was, if you're a teacher, you're going to live below the poverty line. That's what he told me. That was just like, go get him, son. You could do this. That's what my father told me.
Yeah.
But so how do, like, what can we do? Is there, can we reset it in a different way? Do we have to reimagine it all together? Like what, I know it's a loaded question there, but what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, uh, on the one hand, we kind of have to recognize the world that we live in, the society that we live in, where being a teacher in general is a low status profession. It's one of the things that I have kind of researched over time is about the evolution of education in America. And whenever we started, being a teacher was, it was looked at, it was respected, it was revered as an important, probably the most important career or job that we had in our society. And as we went during basically during times like the Industrial Revolution, whenever the factories needed workers, it started being marketed as teaching was a career for women so that the men would leave the classroom and go work in the factories. That's kind of the industrialization, of our country, the way that it sort of went. And it was marketed as a career for women. And once that started happening, it's the status of the profession started going down. I wouldn't say that that's a positive thing, but it's sort of the reality of what we have, and salaries reflect that. They go along with that. Um, so if we were to be able to go into our society and get people to recognize that being a teacher really is one of the most important roles that we have in our society, and get the pay scale to kind of reflect that, I think that that would be absolutely probably the best case scenario of how to get more people to go into teaching as a profession. The way the world that we live in now, it's like you said, we really, as teachers, we have to have supplemental income.
Mhm.
Being a teacher was not designed uh, to be a single income for, if you're a one income family like me right now. I was divorced probably 8 years ago, and that's whenever I started teaching, was around that same time. So I've been having my teaching salary as the main income to my household, and I'm trying to do everything on my own, pay all of my bills by myself. I've had a part-time job almost the whole time, so um teaching is the passion, but there's got to be something else that goes on where I'm able to survive on my own. Um, so I think working with men in education and letting them know, yeah, this is kind of what you're getting into. You're going to have some sort of side income, but I would like to work with guys and help them develop some other skill that they could have working on the side, so they won't just um have to go bag groceries or whatever.
Right, right, right.
you
Yeah, right.
know, be a
That's a fear.
be a pizza delivery
Right.
driver, at night and on the weekends. I would love to help them develop some sort of a side income that's related to teaching or to education, so that they can sort of be in the same field all the time. I think that
So
would be great.
while we I want to put a pin in the teach like a man to get back to it, but to build up some of your backstory, talk to us a little bit about who you were as a middle school slash high school student and your journey. Like what was it along the way that attracted you to the field of education? So a couple touch points along the way in your backstory.
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I was growing up, my dad was a carpenter. He built houses. Um, and my mom was, she stayed home, and she was, basically a homemaker. And I wouldn't say that when I was younger, when I was growing up, I wouldn't say that I had my dad as a great influence. In recent time as an adult, he and I have, sort of we've worked through some things, and we get along fine now. But in the early years, things were tough. Then my parents split when I was like 13, 14, and I didn't really have an influence, as a man. Like, how do you grow from a boy into a
Yep.
man? I didn't really have a guide on that journey. And I think there's a lot of guys go through that, but um I just kind of tried to figure things out on my own. And I mean, I was an okay student, I made good grades, but I got into trouble too. Um and whenever after I graduated, and I was with my girlfriend, and we found out that she was pregnant. I was 20, she was 20. Um, Found out that she was pregnant, and it was just like,
Yeah.
reality hit. And I was like, oh, what do I do now?
Right. Grow
How
quick.
do I handle this? How do
Yeah.
I adapt to being a father whenever I didn't know how to do that? I didn't know how to be a father. I didn't have someone to look at to let me know, okay, these are the things that you need to do. So I went into almost like survival mode at that time. We got married, bought a house, did all the things that we thought this is what it means to be an adult and to be a parent, you know. But we didn't really have the guide to let us know this is what it's really about, and this is what's really important. This is what you need to be focusing on. We were just kind of winging it, you know. Um, and it wasn't long after that, like my daughter, when she was born, she was about a year old whenever 9/11 happened. You were talking about 9/11 earlier, and um, being in the military was kind of something that I had always kind of considered in the back of my mind. I didn't really have family members that were active military. Like my grandfathers were in the military, but they had, that they had retired from that. But by the time I came along or knew anything about it, um, but I had an uncle who had retired from the Air Force, and I admired him a lot. And it was kind of a convergence of situations where I was like, um, patriotism was a big thing after, immediately
Yeah.
after 9/11. It was, everyone was proud and wanted to do their part, and I wanted to do my part. And my uncle had passed away. And it really affected me, where I was like, I want to do something where I can make an impact, the way that he did. And that led me to the recruiting office. And I joined the Navy, and went into their nuclear power program, where I went to school in Charleston, South Carolina. I was there for almost 2 years, going through the nuclear power program, where I learned to work on nuclear reactors on aircraft carriers, on the electrical systems. Um, I did that for almost 2 years, and then we moved to Virginia, where that's where I was stationed, in the shipyards there. And I worked on nuclear reactor electrical systems, and I mean, I enjoyed my time in the military. It helped me kind of find a focus, or a direction. Um, but there were some influences that weren't as great in the military. And I struggled with a lot of things during that time. Like, my depression really started taking off. It was being triggered by a lot of the stresses and things that were going on during that time. But I eventually, whenever I don't know, it was it's kind of difficult to talk about, but I made a lot of choices during that time that came from just me being an unbalanced person, especially like an unbalanced man. Like I didn't know what it really meant to be a man and to be a father and to be a leader, in my house and in my own family. Um, and I almost destroyed my marriage at that time on my own. Um, and eventually, um, whenever I got out of the Navy, we moved back home here to Mississippi where all our family was and everything. And I really was trying to rebuild and reconnect, um, and get my family structure together, but it didn't really work out that way. Where I kept making the wrong decisions and trying to lead in the wrong
Right.
way, but I didn't understand that at the time. I was just basically doing what I thought would be best for me. You know, so as I went through this whole journey, and eventually it led to my marriage fell apart. I got divorced. Um, I didn't know what I was doing as far as a career. I had gone into doing electrical, industrial electrical work, and got laid off from that. And it was almost like I didn't know what what my purpose was. I was just kind of lost. And my wife, my ex-wife now, but she had been pressuring me to just to go be a teacher because she thought that that would be something that I would be able to relate to. My mom's a teacher. My sisters, both of my sisters are teachers. I have aunts and cousins, and teaching is just in our family, and everyone that does it, uh, you know, they're successful at it. They make an impact with students, and it was something that I had kind of considered in the back of my mind, but teachers don't make a lot of money, you know, that there was I couldn't reconcile a, a teacher's salary with what I thought as a man that I was supposed to provide into the family, knowing sort of my background about um, electrical engineering type field, but there's where I live, there's not really a job that calls for that. But anyways, I did go into the classroom. A guy that I went to church with at the time helped me get started in the teaching, getting my license, my certification, and all of that. And it's been it's almost like the story of Jonah, right? Where you're directed, God directed him, this is where you're supposed to go. And he said, no, I don't think I'm going to do
Right.
that. And, and what ended up happening, he was swallowed by the whale, and he had to go through this whole ordeal, but he ended up where he was supposed to be. And I look at teaching as that, where it's, it's where I was supposed to be, but I took, um, the long way around. I took the hard road to get there.
Right.
But
And it's like you were going to be faced with the same lesson until you learned it. You were going to be
right,
faced with that same challenge and same lesson. So I'd love to
right,
know
having
from
to learn that
exactly over and over and over again. You're going to get smacked in
over
the
and
face
over.
with it. So
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about a lesson that you learned in your time in the Navy, in the military, that you take that lesson and you're like, this is something that my kids in my classroom need to understand and need to know?
Probably the biggest thing is knowing that you can't stop. You can't just give up and abandon your your path that you're on. Um, if you're going through hard things, you don't want to stop and just sit there and dwell on it.
Hmm.
You have to keep going and you have to get through it. And that was, as far as like my time in the military, that was one of the things that I had to learn the hard way, too, where um you don't want to just sit there and dwell on the negative things. You have to keep going, and eventually you will, come through the other side.
And it's like the only way through is through,
Yeah,
right? The
the
only
only
way
way
through
through is
something is
through.
through it, right? So
Right.
what does it mean? Well, like, so you started teaching and you did a lot of research around men in education, and
Yeah.
76% of teachers are female, and the number below middle school age range is astronomically skewed in one direction. Probably 90 to 95% of teachers in the elementary school
Yeah.
area are female teachers. And so you're like, I need to get this message out there
Yeah.
around the importance of male role models, male educators, especially at the younger
Mhm.
ages for kids. So
Yeah.
you decided to do the research and write the book Teach Like a Man. So the first question is
Right.
like, what does that mean to teach like a man? What is that like when you wrote the book? What does that mean to you?
Yeah. So just going through the journey that I had, even after I started teaching, is whenever I was really able to kind of look at myself in the mirror and say, "Hey, you have really screwed up your life, and you have been doing that for 20 years. You know, take a step, take a step back, look at yourself and recognize what is going on with you." So I was going through this process of I had to fix myself. So I did
Okay.
that for a while, and then I was thinking about how can I how can I be a good role model for my students if I'm not who I'm supposed to be, if I'm not balanced, if I'm not, in touch with myself, even as a man. And I was um, doing, a lot of basically like self-help type um, programs. And I came across a podcast called Building Men. And I said, that's what I want to do. That's it. I want to be that kind of influence for these students because I have been through things that I could have avoided if I had had someone to kind of help me navigate the journey a little better. And so I had the idea for um, writing the book, which was basically like my journey. It was almost like therapeutic to just write it at all, just putting everything out there, being transparent. And so I had gotten the motivation to actually sit down and finish it, and it took me probably 6 months. Once I actually sat down and really started, putting it all together about these are the lessons that I've learned. This is how I overcame myself and stopped um, self-sabotaging almost. These are the steps that I took, and this is how I would be able to take those lessons and sort of model being a better um, influence for the kids that are in my life. Um, so I um, finally got off my ass and finished the book and put it out there. And I started doing a podcast where I was talking about basically the same ideas that are in the book. And just having it out there, I guess, has helped me to continue growing myself. But I would really like to work with more men and build a network so that we can talk to each other and learn from each other, because I wouldn't say that I'm the expert on any of this. I'm not um the best teacher on my campus. I'm not, the biggest example of what it means to be a man just in general, but I I want to be able to connect more men with each other to help build each other up. And just learn from each other. And that's probably the main thing that I'm working on right now is just getting men together to learn from each other, to learn more.
I love that, dude. And then here's the thing. I mean, as far as the lessons that you just taught us through that story, one is the idea of honesty, being totally honest with yourself about the things that you're going through, your struggles, being authentic with yourself and your message, being able to
Right.
say, this is an area where I messed up, and here's something that you might be able to learn from my mistakes. And then thugging it out, start and then thug it out, like go
Right.
through the trials and tribulations, that
Mhm.
level of perseverance and resiliency. And if that's the
Yeah.
truth, as far as if Building Men did have some level of influence on you to write the book or complete it, I haven't seen any of the royalty checks or any of the anything. You haven't sent
It's
anything my way, dude. So I'm just
it's
letting
it's
you
in the
know.
mail. It's in
All
the
right.
mail, Dennis. It's coming.
It's good stuff. No, but
But
it
those
is an
things,
honor. It's an honor to even have you mention that, in any capacity, that there might have been some level of influence. I do appreciate you saying that.
yeah, I mean, and it's the truth. I was like, uh, we need more of this in the world, and I feel like I have something that I can contribute. And so that's what I'm trying to do. But these are like the things that we're talking about. This is stuff that men, we don't go out and share all of the dark stuff.
Hmm.
We don't talk about that. We'll put things out like, hey, I made this achievement, or I did this accomplishment, or this positive thing happened. Well, what about, the dark stuff that happens, that the stuff that you lay awake at night thinking about. You don't talk to people about that. You don't talk to other men about that. And that's something that I want to change. That was one thing that weighed on me was all the mistakes that I had made. I didn't have someone to just put it out and just say, look, this is how I screwed up. How do I overcome that? How do I get past that? And I think that's, we need to, men in general, we just need to have a good network of other men that may have gone through the same thing or similar things, and we can talk to each other about it and help each other through some of those struggles.
Totally agree. And there's a tremendous amount of strength in our own vulnerabilities, and to not just share the stories of the game winning shot with the kids in your life. It's these are the struggles that I went through as well. So if I'm a guy and I'm listening to this and I'm not quite sure I have what it takes to work with younger kids, with elementary, middle school, high school kids, age level notwithstanding, what do you think? What are one or two things that I need to think about or need to learn or need to research if I'm really interested in becoming an educator and I want to impact the next generation?
Whatever it is that you have, they need it. Whatever it is that you bring to the table, they need to, they need to hear that. They need to experience
Yep.
that, because we've all got something that we can contribute. Everyone has something that we can bring to the table. Like the way that I conduct my classroom is not, I would say, a typical classroom. Like, I didn't go to college to get my education degree. I learned classroom management as I went. So I just brought what I had from basically my time being in the military and
Right.
other life experience, and I walked into the classroom and I just said, here I am. What's up, guys? And I think that the students responded to it as well as they did because I was just my
Real.
authentic self. I was just like, this is me. I'm not gonna um put on a show about this is what I'm supposed to do because I'm a teacher. I have to, say these certain things or act this certain way. I was just me, you know, and they responded to it pretty well. And we were able to, to get a lot of things done.
Is there an educational theorist, a philosopher, someone that you closely align your own educational philosophy with?
I mean, I have read some about um classroom theory. I wouldn't say that there's really anyone that I related to so much. Um,
Even pop culture, is there anyone out there now that you're like, I really enjoy the way this guy is talking? I'll give you an example. So, like, theorist wise, I love Lev Vygotsky, zone of proximal development. I really believe in that as far as like stretching kids beyond what they thought was initially possible. But then I'm a huge, I'm a huge Andrew Huberman fan. I'm a huge Jordan Peterson fan. Like, I take a lot of what they're saying and I
yeah,
incorporate it into my own philosophy and how I'm working with kids as well. So one is more
yeah,
classical theorist as far as education. Two guys, one is a science guy, one is, he's a doctor of psychology, right? And so I
yeah.
take all that and I make it into, okay, let me make this work in my own brain. So how about you? Are there any other influence that you have out there that really impact your educational decision making, educational philosophy?
Yeah, I would say within the last couple of years, Jordan Peterson has
Yeah.
been a big, influence as far as that. Even going further back, the just growing up, seeing Robin Williams in Dead Poet
Like,
Society was uh, the way that he was authentic and just was like, hey, this is what's important and this is what you really need to know. And we're not going to stress about so much the, all of these, things that are expected that we're going to learn. So I would say I probably internalized that a lot. And I took that into the classroom with me,
totally
learning from him.
agree. It's interesting. He would be Professor Keating was definitely one of my inspirations, and I'll
Right.
combine that with the Robin Williams character in Good Will Hunting as well.
Yeah. Goodwill Hunting.
And with the being the therapist working with Matt Damon, and how he was able to take a kid who had suffered an extreme amount of trauma and abuse in his life that had
Right.
created all these barriers and all these walls. Extremely talented, extremely intelligent, but wanted to be the tough guy. And that's something that we see. I'm sure you see that in your classroom. I know I see that with the boys that I work with, is they
Right.
put up this hard shell, this exterior that
Hmm.
they're afraid to let you inside.
Hmm.
And Will Hunting finally got an opportunity to connect with his best self when Robin Williams helped him, break down a lot of those preconceived notions and barriers that he had of himself, that
Right.
it was not his fault ultimately what happened to him.
Yeah, and
I
those are
love that
and
dude.
those are the guys that need us the most.
Agreed.
The ones that have the toughest exterior and the front that they show to, everyone. They're the ones that, that really need some influence and some guidance.
So before I ask the last question to you, JD, two things. One, let us know where we can connect with you and find you, and then two, tell us a little bit about your online group as well.
Okay, so yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. It's Teach Like a Man or the JD Fleming, all one word. That's depending on what platform you're on. That's how you can find me. Teachlikeaman.com has all the links to all of my socials, and it's also got a link to my community that I'm growing of men that are getting together and um, trying to become the best version of themselves so that they can be the best influence for the students that really need them, especially the boys that may not have a positive male influence in their life. Otherwise, that's where we're doing our community. There's a link to that on the website. and on all my socials. The link in bio takes us to that community that we're building.
Love it. I'm gonna go join that today. I'll join. I'd love to participate and interact with your community as well.
Yeah,
Last
we're
question.
just
Yeah, dude, go ahead.
we're just getting started, but yeah, growth. We would love to have as much growth as possible. The more network and the more community that we have, the stronger we all are together, right?
Totally
We
agree
don't
with
want to
that.
be a lone wolf because that's how I did things for a long time, just being a lone wolf. And it's a lot better to be part of the pack.
I like that. That's like from the mouth of Zach Galifianakis up on the roof in The Hangover, right? I was
Right.
like, it's like a wolf pack thing. All right,
Wolf
so
pack. Yeah.
last without the roofies and cocaine and strippers in
Yeah.
Vegas.
Yeah.
So last question, JD, is someone's listening to this podcast episode, ton of value already. They press stop, and they could do just one thing. And doing this one thing can really have an enormous impact on the trajectory of their life. What's that one thing someone could do right now?
Just be authentic and make connections. Be yourself and let other people see that and let them connect with you.
Love that,
I
dude.
I think that's probably the most important thing is building connections and maintaining those connections.
So if you are someone who's interested in getting into the teaching profession, or you know someone that is on that path, make sure that you have them reach out to JD, pick up his book, Teach Like a Man. We'll pull that all that information into the show notes of this episode. JD Fleming, dude, I really appreciate the last hour or so, man. I love what you're doing. I'm endorsing your work wholeheartedly. Let's stay connected and see what we could do to support one another, dude.
Thanks, brother. I really appreciate it.
To the audience, if this episode resonated with you in any way, shape, or form, I would really appreciate it if you would rate it, review it, and then more than anything, share this episode with anyone who you think might get some level of value from it. Audience, thanks for listening. Go one step further than you thought you could go. We'll see you next time on Building Men.